Three spine-chilling true horror stories of sinister summer vacations. Hidden terrors revealed. The cabin stood eerily quiet, waiting. Mark Johnson could feel the chill of something wrong as he loaded the family's minivan under the scorching midday sun. Sweat dripped down his brow, and an unsettling feeling gnawed at him, like a bitter aftertaste that wouldn't go away. He brushed it off after a long week at work. Who wouldn't be a bit on edge? Still, a shadow loomed in his gut as they drove toward the old cabin by the lake, a place they had visited for years, shared stories, laughter, and esmores. But this time felt different. As they arrived and stepped out onto the familiar dirt path, the beauty of blue skies and gentle waves beckoned. It should have been perfect, but there was a strange odor lingering in the air, something rancid mixed with burnt leaves that made him wince. Dismissing it as just the locality's rustic charm, he watched Mia and Jake dash toward the water. Yet, his gaze was pulled to a group of locals across the way, eyes watching with a kind of intense familiarity that sent shivers racing down his spine. Nothing to worry about, he muttered, forcing a smile. But when Harold, the quirky handyman from their neighborhood, showed up uninvited, Mark felt the walls closing in. Each glance from Harold bore too much curiosity, laced with an almost palpable threat. "Just offering a hand, Mark," he chirped too cheerfully, as if he was more interested in the family's possessions than helping them fix the porch. Mark shared the feeling with Lisa, who shrugged it off with a laugh, excited for their vacation plans. As dusk fell, the night clamped down with an unsettling grip. The intense scent grew stronger, pressing into their lungs. Whispers swirled through the trees, and scratching noises echoed around the cabin. The children huddled tighter in their blankets, frightened by Mia's claims of shadowy figures outside the window that seemed to beckon them. "You shouldn't be here," they whispered, sending chills coursing through Mark's nerves. With a strange compulsion, Mark found himself wandering to the local store earlier, where an old woman spoke in hushed tones of the woods legends families trapped, cursed for intruding on sacred lands. Panic flooded him, that gnawing fear resurfacing, and dread settled in his chest like a stone. Could their cherished family vacation be turning into a nightmare? Just then, a loud thud above them, a haunting wake-up call. As the children whimpered, the door swung open without a sound, standing wide as if inviting them to leave. But the minivan was dead. Panic surged through Mark, leading him to confront Harold, desperate for answers. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." But as he stepped outside, shadows shifted along the tree line. Faces he couldn't recognize watching, waiting. His heart raced, caught between the pull of dread and the need to protect his family. Only moments from learning the truth, Mark felt the cool air turn frigid. And then, just behind him, a whisper stirred as if drawn from the depths of the night, calling every name aloud. As darkness slithered closer, suffocating the remnants of their hope. Cold tendrils of fear wrapped around Mark as he stood frozen in place, the dark whisper curling around him like smoke. He barely managed to turn his head, but he didn't see anyone behind him, just shadows dancing against the cabin's creaking wood. A chill settled deep in his bones, a stark contrast to the sweltering summer night. "Mia, Jake," he called, his voice trembling, barely more than a whisper. The kids had been right to be scared. Something sinister was brewing outside. A soft rustle erupted from the thicket beyond the tree line, a promise of danger lurking just out of sight. The whispering sensation intensified, almost beckoning him to step into the darkness. But Mark couldn't abandon his children. He dashed back inside, slamming the door shut behind him. Lisa was crouched beside the kids, their eyes wide, searching for comfort. "What is going on, Mark?" she asked, her voice edged with confusion and fear. The kids had curled into one another, clutching each other close like terrified animals seeking shelter. Mark shook his head, desperation building in his throat. "We're not alone. We need to stay together." He grabbed the flashlight from the table, its beam flickering hesitantly, as if sharing in his dread. Another loud thud echoed above, sounding more insistent now. Mark pointed the beam towards the ceiling, eyes darting anxiously. What was that? Is there someone up there? Maybe it's just the wind, Lisa suggested weakly, but Mark saw the uncertainty behind her eyes. We need to find out. He took a deep breath, awareness prickling at the base of his neck, a dark instinct urging him forward. Stay here, both of you, he instructed, pointing the flashlight toward the steep staircase leading to the attic. Please, don't leave us, Jake cried, trembling. I'll be right back, Mark promised, though he couldn't convince himself. With slow, deliberate steps, he approached the staircase, the beam slicing through the encroaching darkness. The wooden steps creaked beneath his weight, each sound feeling amplified in the tense silence. The attic door loomed above, splintered wood framing a gaping void of blackness. Mark hesitated, heart pounding. Why did he feel that something was waiting for him just beyond the door? He gripped the handle, twisting slowly. It opened with a groan, revealing a space thick with dust and shadows. As he stepped inside, the beam of his flashlight caught glimpses of forgotten furniture, cobwebs strung like ribbons across the room. But it was the mirror leaned against the far wall that grabbed his attention. It was covered in a sheer film of dust, and yet, somehow, Henry glimpsed movement beyond and felt an unshakable urge to look closer. He approached, squinting into the dim light reflecting back at him. The room and the mirror was identical but different. The walls seemed alive, writhing as if they had a life of their own. Then he saw a dark figure in the corner of the reflection, not visible in the room itself. Mark stumbled backward, breathing raggedly. No, he whirled around, wanting to flee, but felt the air lock around him, heavy and dense. Then came the whispers again, louder now, chanting his name, luring him in. Mia? Jake! He yelled, panic rising sharply. He rushed downstairs as shadows closed in, arms reaching out, pleading for him to stay. But when he made it back to the living room, the children were missing. Lisa! He shouted, fear erupting in his chest like wildfire. The cabin was silent now, too silent. The door he'd closed was wide open, swinging slightly in the night breeze. Something deep in the woods rustled, and this time it was not just a whisper. It was a loud, wailing sound, a cry of anguish that echoed in Mark's ears like thunder. He rushed out of the cabin, searching for any sign of movement, anything at all. As he stepped outside, the cold night air wrapped around him, and he felt that the eyes watching again everywhere, from every direction. But in the midst of it, just ahead, he caught sight of a figure, dark and indistinct, slipping between the trees. Without thinking, he stumbled after it, desperation driving his steps. What would he find out there in the shadows? And more importantly, was he already too late to save his family? The whispers intensified, now a hive of voices demanding his attention, demanding his surrender to the darkness. He took another step forward, the weight of unseen truths pulling him deeper into the woods. Just a bit further would he uncover the horrifying secrets that lay buried beneath their summer facade? What awaited him beyond the tree line could change everything if he could find out in time. Mark stumbled into the trees, limbs brushing against him like skeletal fingers. The air thickened, coating his throat with dread, making it hard to breathe. The dark figure he'd seen slipped further away, almost fading into the night, testing his resolve. He chased after it, heart racing, mind screaming warnings that he ignored. Mia? Jake! He shouted again, the names echoing into the void around him. Only the shadows answered back, mocking, haunting. Each step twisted the world around him. The ground felt alive, pulsing beneath his feet. The whispers swirled, flaring in intensity, almost forming words, resonating with a horrible familiarity. Suddenly, the figure halted, just ahead. A glimpse of pale skin, a face, or was it just a trick of the light? He hesitated, fear pooling in his stomach. Who was there? The question felt foolish, challenging the dark. Nothing replied, but the silence was suffocating, and he could hear a heartbeat, loud and chaotic. Was it his? Tentatively, he stepped closer. Shadows writhed around him, sucking the warmth from the air. Then a voice cut through. Help me! It was a child's voice, faint but desperate. Mark's heart jumped. Jake? Mia? He called, dread knotting tight in his chest. It wasn't he, just the voice. Something was moving. Ripped cries echoed nearby. He turned and saw, Through the thinning trees, a flash of movement. Louder now, voices chanting, drowning him in despair, and twisting the air itself. Help, please! The police strangled him. He dashed forward, limbs swinging wildly, urgency fueling every reckless movement. But among the trees, the shadows seemed to conspire against him, leading him in circles. Each step was heavy with an unseen burden, pulling him downward. Stay together, stay together. It was a mantra he repeated, but he felt the darkness pressing in. Cold fingers grazed his arms, tripping him, pulling at his clothes. He fell to his knees, gasping, panic flooding his senses. Then he felt it. Something hard beneath his hand, a small, chilled object. He picked it up, recognizing it in the dim light. It was a doll, its fabric worn and torn, an old relic of childhood play. But what caught his attention were the wide, empty eyes staring back at him, black holes of darkness. Mark froze. No, this can't be. He dropped the doll like it burned him and took 2 hurried steps back. The whispers renewed, rising to a shriek, pressing against his ears, demanding. And then the forest opened up before him, revealing a clearing bathed in silvery moonlight. He squinted into the brightness, breath held in anticipation. At the center stood a twisted tree, blackened bark gnarled with age. Around it lay remnants, old toys, broken trinkets, pieces of lost lives he couldn't comprehend. Each one felt like a scream of the forgotten, vibrating in his bones. Before he could question what it meant, the figure re-emerged. This time he recognized it. It wasn't he, just a silhouette anymore. It was Mia, her face drained of color, eyes wide and unseeing. "Daddy," she whispered, voice trembling like autumn leaves caught in a wind. Terror shot through him. What happened? Where's Jake? But no answer came, just the endless layers of the forest closing in around him, thick and heavy. And behind them, the chanting grew louder, the voice of malevolence wrapping around him, pulling him toward the tree, deeper into the madness. Why had they let him here? What fate awaited him among the shadows? Mark stumbled forward, desperation clawing at his throat. "Mia!" he screamed as she began to fade back into the shadows, slipping away from his grasp. Would he lose her too? Just as he raced to catch her, he felt a cold grip pull at his ankle, dragging him backward, away from the clearing. The forest closed in, and somewhere, lost in the cacophony of whispers, a chilling thought struck him. What if this was only the beginning? And as darkness engulfed him, he had just one desperate question left: would he ever escape the forest of lost children? The grip tightened around Mark's ankle, a frozen vice that sent a shock wave of icy panic through his veins. He yanked his leg, desperate to break free. But the darkness had teeth, barbed and unyielding, pulling him deeper into the abyss. "Mia!" he shouted, voice cracking, reverberating off the trees like a ghost's lament. But the shadows only laughed, a low, rumbling sound that clawed at his sanity. He kicked out wildly, adrenaline surging, and finally broke free of the unseen force. Scrambling, he pushed himself away, heart racing, breath coming in sharp gasps. Mark turned back to the clearing, but the moonlight felt dimmer now, swallowed by swirling mists. The twisted tree loomed like a century of nightmares, its gnarled branches reaching out as if wanting to snatch him back. The palms of his hands stung from where he had pressed against the rough ground as he got up, scrambling to his feet. "Mia, where are you?" The desperation in his voice sliced through the thickening night. A rustling sound came from behind him, and he spun around, instincts alight. A figure lurked just beyond the shadows. His heart slammed against his ribcage. "Jake?" he called, hoping against hope that it was his son. A quiet chuckle echoed from the darkness. It wasn't he, Jake. Before Mark could react, another doll tumbled from the underbrush, landing at his feet with a soft thump. It was a matching horror to the first, eyes black and vacant, lips stitched cruelly into a grin. This wasn't he, just a game. The forest was alive, steeped in dark magic, and its children were the unseen playthings. "Help me this time." The voice was clear, a sweet, innocent echo against the backdrop of chaos. He turned to the source, heart lurching. A child stood there, shadowed but familiar. A glance, how could he mistake those delicate features? "Mia!" he cried out, taking a step forward. But as he did, the child vanished, swallowed by the creeping shadows. The whispers surged around him, rising into a frenzied chant, mocking, taunting. He felt their cold fingers caressing his thoughts, planting doubts. How long had he been trapped? Hours? Days? Somewhere in that turmoil, the chanting poured into his mind, a message growing clearer. Join us, join us. Panic coursed through him. No, this wasn't how it was supposed to be. He needed to find Mia, needed to pull her out of this nightmare. Mark raced in a direction that felt instinctual, fueled by a primal need for survival. Each footfall felt heavier, as though the forest conspired to drag him down. The tree shadows seemed to stretch and sway, coming closer as he moved. Then, he spotted something ahead, another clearing. The faintest glimmer of light sparked hope within him. He stumbled toward it, fighting through thick brambles and entangled roots that reached for him like hands. But as he reached the edge, the hope soured. A sight he wished he never saw opened up before him. Dozens of eyes, empty and lifeless, stared back from the rim of the clearing. They belonged to lost children, faces blurring into a grotesque tapestry of sorrow. The chilling realization crashed down. He wasn't the only one who had sought escape, and now they were all watching him. Help me, the call came again, soft and pleading, but layered with a sinister undercurrent. These children weren't begging for salvation. They lured him deeper, and he felt the profound weight of their despair seeping into his bones. Fear surged, igniting his instincts to flee. Yet, from behind, a figure emerged, fading in and out of the darkness. It was Mia, but she looked different, twisted and forlorn, eyes wide, pupils reflecting the depth of the abyss. "Daddy," she murmured, reaching out, fingers trembling. Mark's heart shattered. "No, don't you dare take her," he yelled, desperation clawing at his voice. But the further Mia reached, the more the creeping entanglements of shadows drew closer, threatening to consume them both. They wanted him to join, to surrender, to abandon the fight. Would he stand and fight, or slip into the shadows like the others? The choice loomed heavy as darkness surged. He was running out of time. What would he decide before the forest claimed him for good? Mark stumbled back, raw panic thundering through him like a heartbeat. His eyes darted between the figure of his daughter and the nightmarish sea of lost souls that surrounded them, their pitiful eyes boring into him, filled with a sorrow that felt heavy enough to strangle him. "Mia." He lunged forward, heart pounding against his ribcage, but she seemed to sway like a leaf caught in the wind, flickering in and out of his reach. "Daddy," her voice flickered, laced with the sweet sound of childhood, yet tinged with an unsettling echo. The moment stretched unbearably as dread painted a cold sweat on his brow. Then, with a suddenness that stole his breath, Mia's eyes darkened, becoming two voids of black. "Help me," she whispered, her voice now hard and taunting like a siren's call. It cut through him, shredding the remnants of his hope. "Stop," he cried out, the words slipping from his throat like a prayer. But the forest responded with a sinister laughter that wrapped around him, squeezing tighter. Mark felt something shift within him. He couldn't let the darkness take Mia like this. He had to break the spell. "You're not my daughter," he screamed, words tearing from his soul. "You're not real." For a heartbeat, the shadows hesitated, the forest held its breath. But then, like a monstrous tide, they surged towards him. Branches twisted, cottony mists eddied, blurring the borderline of reality. Join us," they echoed, voices rising in a cacophony that whipped through the trees. Every syllable was a dagger, promising oblivion. He turned his back on the specter of Mia, fleeing deeper into the forest. His feet pounded against the ground, the rhythm of survival. But the darkness hounded him, encroaching like a predator stalking its prey. He could feel it crawling under his skin, a chilling touch that left trails of ice along his spine. He veered left, desperate to escape the thrumming sense that the forest was alive, taking pleasure in his torment. He blinked away tears, pushing the shadows back with sheer will, and pressed onward. Ahead, a flicker of light arced between skeletal trees, pulsating like a heartbeat. Relief surged anew, fiercely displacing his fear. Mark rushed toward it, every muscle aching, every nerve on fire. But as he entered the glow, his heart sank. It wasn't salvation, it was a circle of dancing shadows, lost souls, children who had become part of the darkness, their laughter ringing hollow, filling the air with a bleak melody of despair. "Come play with us," they chanted, their hands reaching forward, looking not unlike the branches of the twisted tree, wanting to engulf him whole. Mark felt their desperation and overwhelming sadness mixed with a relentless hunger. Somehow, they needed him to complete their wretched existence, to join in their eternal game. "No," he shouted, his voice shaking. "I want to join you." The circle wobbled, breaking. Mark took a step back, scanning for an exit, mind racing. Then he spotted something glimmering on the forest floor, a small, cracked mirror, its surface marred and flickering. "Help me," he heard again, Mia's voice piercing through the dizzying chaos. Before he knew it, he knelt, desperately grasping the mirror. Holding it toward the approaching shadows, his heart pounded in his chest. The reflection wavered, stars flickering across the surface. "Mia, I want to leave you," he cried, his resolve surging. But the mirror didn't show her. It only reflected his dread, a reflection of himself, fractured and engulfed by darkness. The shadows gathered, their eyes glowing with an impatient hunger. He realized they could feast on his doubt and fear, and he was teetering on the edge, about to be consumed. With the echoes of lost children rising behind him, Mark had to make a choice. Right or left, forward into madness or backward into despair. "Please, just show me," he whispered to the mirror, and as the shadows lunged, he braced himself for whatever was to come next. What hidden truths would the haunting mirror reveal before the darkness demanded him? Mark's breath hitched as he clutched the mirror tighter, the cold glass pressing painfully against his palm. The shadows pulsed closer, their forms dark and undulating, eager to capture his despair. He squeezed his eyes shut, a futile effort to erase the nightmare unfolding within the forest. "Just show me," he repeated, voice barely above a whisper, and prayed one last time. In that moment, the air around him thickened, pulsating with an unseen energy. The mirror began to tremble, a low hum resonating from its cracked surface. Despite the chaos, despite the clamoring darkness, a shimmering image wavered into being. It flickered and stuttered like a malfunctioning television, first a distant scene of a playground, then a shadowy figure, then Mia. The name escaped him unbidden as the echo of her laughter flared in his mind. It was another memory, one that lived in the corners of his heart. They played there together, swinging high and laughing hard. But as quickly as it came, the image dissolved into static, swallowed by the waiting darkness. "No, show me her face," he shouted, voice breaking, full of a raw desperation that felt good and terrible all at once. The chilling response came as a wave of icy dread. The dark figures seemed to draw nearer, emboldened by his fear. Fingers brushed his shoulder, slithering like tendrils of smoke. Mark recoiled, nearly losing his grip on the mirror. The shadows hissed, a sound reminiscent of whispers exchanged among conspirators. "Join us, it's easier here," he couldn't breathe. With sheer will, he thrust the mirror into the gathering darkness, its jagged edge cutting through the miasma. The reflection twisting his own face against a backdrop of shadows that pressed in on him. He had to know. "What do you want?" he screamed, his voice angry and broken. The forest fell silent, stilled by the weight of his question. Then, without warning, it was as if the shadows recoiled, momentarily dragging back as though they were afraid of the light within the mirror. All at once, the resonating cry of children echoed, their voices a ghostly choir. "Help us, help us." Their sounds merged into a cacophony that was haunting, an unholy alliance of despair and desperation. In the harrowing silence that followed, Mark felt an unsettling calm, a momentary suspension of the encroaching misery. He dared to glance into the mirror again. This time, it wasn't just darkness. A flicker of light surged within, illuminating a path through his inner fears. Mia's laughter broke through the suffocating silence, not a taunting echo, but the joyful trill of his daughter. He gasped, heart racing anew as the mirror showed glimpses of her swinging high, hands flying, tiny feet barely touching the ground, radiant with innocent joy. With renewed determination, Mark's pulse pounded with purpose. "You need to fight, Mia," he shouted to the depths of the mirror. "You're still in there." He felt the shadows writhe, a furious mass resisting the light of revelation. Panic surged through him again, the looming threat like ice pouring down his back. The forest vibrated, whispering maledictions and promises of oblivion. But he could see now. He could see her past the swirling darkness, past the choking whispers. I will save you, he vowed, each word hardened by resolve. But the shadows roared in retaliation, hungry for his fear. In that echoing void of desperation, with fear ripping at the edges of his sanity, Mark faced the dreadful truth. Had the forest shown him Mia, or precisely what his mind desperately needed to see? The cold fingers of uncertainty coiled around his heart. Then, a deafening howl erupted. Shadows lunged, and the ground trembled beneath him, reality blurring as chaos engulfed Mark in a frigid embrace. The conundrum was stark. Would he sacrifice himself for a glimmer of hope, or would he succumb to the consuming void? As he was pulled toward the yawning darkness, the pieces began to fall into place. But as the shadows merged and surrounded him, Mark realized there was one question that remained: what price would he have to pay to reclaim her soul? The ground heaved beneath Mark's feet, the shadows swirling like a storm unleashed. His heart raced, pounding a rhythm of fear in his ears. The mirror was now a beacon, the singular point of light amidst the darkness threatening to swallow him whole. Gritting his teeth, he tightened his grip on the edges, feeling the jagged glass bite into his skin, each shard a reminder of the price he was willing to pay. "Stay away from me," he yelled, defiance coursing through his veins as he backed away, desperately keeping the mirror between him and the closing dark. But the shadows advanced, relentless and insatiable, gnashing and howling, their cries filled with anguish. Fingers of smoke flicked around the edges of his vision, whispering promises that curled around his thoughts, promising relief, peace. "Let go, join us, you can be free." Mark shook his head fiercely, resisting the seductive pull. "I'm not leaving without Mia." His scream pierced the thick darkness, shattering the deceptive silence, a challenge that reverberated through the air. With every ounce of willpower, he forced himself to focus on the mirror, willing it to show him more of her, to reveal where she was trapped among the dark. And then, in a flash, her image appeared again, a silhouette against the oppressive gloom. Mia stood there, small and fragile, her eyes wide with fear, but alive. It was a bittersweet thrill that sent shivers spiraling down his spine. "Mia," he cried, "can you hear me?" Her lips moved, forming words, but no sound reached him amid the dissonance of the surrounding shadows. Panic surged anew, clawing at his sanity. The darkness shifted violently, a throbbing mass as if it were sentient, drawn to his despair. The howls crescendoed, magnifying his dread, and he felt their cold breath wrapping around his throat like a noose. "Mark," came her voice, disembodied and distant, yet so familiar. "D-Daddy." It pierced through the chaotic wind swirling all around him. Fighting through the haze, he stepped forward, each movement feeling like wading through molasses. "Mia, hold on." But another howl erupted, and simultaneously, the shadows lunged. They coiled around him like serpents, slick and hungry, pulling him backward into the abyss. Mark gasped, fear clawing at his throat as he shoved the mirror into the darkness, its surface shimmering with an angry light. "Enough," he roared, feeling the desperate energy surge from within him. The shadows recoiled slightly, retreating from the brightness. He seized the chance and stepped into the light, pushing the mirror toward Mia's image with force. "You have to fight, Mia. You must fight them." Her form wavered, flickering like a dying flame, and for a moment he could see the truth behind the mask of shadows. There was terror in her eyes, yes, but also a flicker of hope. The darkness hissed in fury, as Mark felt the full weight of their anger press against him. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, taunting him relentlessly. "Fail her, and we will take everything from you," they snarled, voices weaving into one. "Pain is all you'll know." Mark's stomach twisted. He could feel the deep-rooted fear clawing at him, echoes of his own past failures tugging at the edges of his mind. But Mia's face anchored him. Her laughter, her spirit, it lit a fire within that pushed back against the shadows closing in. With a vengeance, he pulled at the mirror again, forcing all his hope and love for her into its depths. The glass glowed brighter, illuminating the forest. "You can come back, Mia. Just reach for the light." But the shadows roared in response, and Mark felt a violent convulsion of power surround him. "You will not take her," he shouted, heart racing, tension exploding like a volcano within him. Suddenly, the ground ruptured beneath him. He stumbled as dark tendrils reached up, wanting to consume him whole. But in the chaos, he spotted something, a tiny hand stretching from the depths of the mirror, a beacon against the dark. "Mia, take my hand." As he extended his arm, the shadows coiled tighter, ready to drag him to the depths. But Mark would not let them win. He took a deep breath and lunged forward, reaching for his daughter. In that split second, he felt the searing pain of the glass as it drew blood, but the connection pulsed between him and the mirror. Would they escape the forest of shadows together, or would something far more sinister claim them both? Mark's vision blurred as the glass sank deeper into his hand, the jagged edge biting into flesh, but pain was a fleeting concern. All that mattered was Mia. He felt her warmth, her spirit flickering just out of reach, like a candle sputtering in the wind. "Mia now?" he shouted, his voice breaking through the turbulent air, a lifeline thrown into the abyss. The shadows writhed with fury, their whispers turning to a cacophony of rage as they lashed out at him, striking with unseen claws. For a moment, they hesitated, drawn by the glow of the mirror, but then they surged. The air grew heavy, pressing against Mark as he strained to propel his daughter's tiny hand toward his. "Mia, please." His heart raced, desperate and frantic. Every second felt like a lifetime as uncertainty crept in. What if he failed? What if he lost her? He could sense the shadows coiling tighter around him, a vice squeezing the very breath from his lungs. Each sweet whisper now twisted into grotesque laughter, mocking his effort. "You think you can save her?" they jeered. "You always fail now." Mark roared back. "I won't let you take her." He focused everything within him, pulling at the very fabric of the light. The mirror pulsed, its energy responding to his desperation, illuminating the darkness like a star in a blackened sky. "Mia, you have to feel it. The light. Take my hand." Through the haze, he saw her slight form, trembling but resolute. "Daddy," she cried, her voice trembling like a strand of silk in a storm. It tore at his heart, gave him strength. Then, she reached fingertips grazing his own. But before their hands could clasp, the shadows screamed, a chilling sound that vibrated through the ground. "No," echoed from the depths of darkness, pulling back like a tide resisting the shore. They surged forward, coiling like snakes, ready to snatch her away. Mark's blood turned to ice, a chill spreading through his veins. He couldn't let it in like this. He wouldn't. With a primal roar, he leaned fully into the mirror, ignoring the blinding pain, and thrust his arm deeper. "Mia now?" At that moment, their hands connected. Electricity crackled, sending a shock wave of energy radiating outward. For a heartbeat, they were bound by pure strength, the love of a father and daughter igniting against the encroaching dark. But the shadows were relentless, twisting around him, their grasp like a feverish grip. Mark's mind screamed. Panic clawed at his throat. Could they break free? Would they be devoured? Suddenly, a fierce light erupted from the mirror, blinding and furious. It tore the shadows apart with a flash, scattering them like ashes in the wind. Mark felt a rush of strength take over, lifting him and Mia as if the ground no longer mattered. And then, it happened. With one final surge of power, they were yanked into the brightness, the mirror shattering around them, the shards reflecting 1,000 glimmers of what once was. The darkness screamed in a haunting crescendo, fading into a haunting wail that echoed through the woods. Then it was silent. Mark gasped, cradling Mia in his arms, heart racing. They had escaped the grasp of darkness, or had they? "Daddy, I'm scared." Her voice was a whisper, shivering in the aftermath. Mark looked around, blinking against the brightness of the forest, heart pounding as he searched for signs of danger. The air was still, but something felt off. A cold dread crawled up his spine, tightening around his throat like a noose. Just then, in the distance, he saw shadows moving, creeping along the edges of the tree line. They were waiting. "Stay close, Mia," he whispered, the fear flooding back like a tide. Something darker was still out there, lurking, watching. As they turned to flee, another roar echoed behind them, much closer than before. His breath quickened again. How long could they evade it? In the distance, the shadows twisted and turned, and Mark realized this fight was far from over. Mark's breath came in ragged gasps as he squinted into the treacherous gloom. The comforting light from the shattered mirror had faded, the forest now draped in a suffocating cloak of darkness. Daddy, I can't see. Mia's small voice trembled, fear creeping into her words. Just hold my hand, he urged, tightening his grip on her tiny fingers, feeling the heat of her panic match the chill threading through his own heart. They moved cautiously, every sound magnified in the eerie silence. A snapping twig, the rustle of leaves, each noise sent a jolt of terror through Mark. A low growl rumbled from behind them. Was it closer this time? The shadows seemed to slither like predators just beyond the veil of night, taunting him. The towering trees loomed like watchful sentinels, and Mark felt as though they were being encircled, trapped in a sinister game. Mia, he whispered, eyes darting around. We need to find somewhere safe. Just keep moving. As they inched forward, the ground beneath them was suddenly uneven, soft dirt giving way to something cold and solid. Mark's heart dropped as he stumbled upon the remnants of a small clearing. Something bad had happened here. What's wrong? Mia asked, sensing his unease. Nothing, sweetie. It's just we have to keep. Then he noticed it. The ground was littered with shards of glass. Pieces glimmered like broken stars in the dark. He squatted down, his pulse quickening, the memory of the mirror still fresh. Without warning, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure pale and twisted slipped through the shadows, a ghastly outline weaving in and out of the trees. Mark's skin prickled with dread. Mia, stay behind me. He pushed her behind him as he squinted into the darkness, heart racing. He could see it more clearly now. Its face was featureless but for a wide, grinning mouth filled with jagged teeth, a smile that seemed to mock him. Daddy, Mia whimpered, pulling at his arm. I'm scared. Run. He yelled, adrenaline surging through him. He seized Mia's hand and bolted from the clearing. They ran, desperation fueling their movements, the shadows hot on their heels. The creature's laughter, low and sinister, echoed behind them, chilling Mark to the bone. The laughter grew louder, closer, as if the very forest was alive with malice. They reached the edge of the woods, a thin line of moonlight filtering through. Mark could see the outline of their car parked on the gravel road, a distant beacon of hope. But just as he took a step towards it, the ground beneath him shuddered. A large branch crashed down nearby, narrowly missing him, sending a cascade of leaves flying. The creature emerged, now fully formed, its grotesque face illuminated for a fleeting moment by the moonlight. Mark recoiled as the figure lunged forward, arms outstretched, fingers like talons. Mia, run. Get to the car. He thrust her toward the open door, his heart pounding with each footfall. She did as he commanded, the adrenaline giving her wings, but Mark felt a sudden heaviness in the air. He turned back, fists clenched tight, preparing for the worst. The laughter twisted again, slicing through the night. You can't run from what you've unleashed, it taunted, its voice echoing like thunder across the clearing. That chilling line reverberated in Mark's mind. What had he unleashed? The shadows flickered and twisted, and he could feel their presence closing in again. The car. He darted forward, preparing to leap into the front seat, when suddenly something cool clasped around his ankle, dragging him down. The laughter exploded into a cacophony around him, chains of darkness binding him to the earth. Mia, he cried, desperate. But her terrified squeal faded as she reached the threshold of safety. Mark fought against the oppressive grip, the shadows surging, gnashing, ready to claim him. Mia, he shouted again, as cold fingers tightened around his neck. And then, just before he fully succumbed, he saw it at the edge of the clearing, a reflection shimmering in the moonlight, the broken pieces of the mirror, calling out to him once more, there. Shards of fragmented salvation. Would it save him again? The shadows were closing in. Time was running out. Mark's heart pounded as he fought against the dark grip pulling him down, his breath ragged and panicked. The whispers swirled around him, a sickening cocktail of despair and mockery. He could feel the chill of the shadows creeping closer, threatening to consume him entirely. Mia, he screamed again, desperation lacing his voice. But all he could hear was the laughter, cold, cruel, echoing off the trees, thrumming in his chest like a death knell. His gaze darted to the shards of the mirror lying just beyond his reach, glimmering with a faint light amidst the enveloping darkness. They felt like a promise, an echo of hope. Somehow, some way, he had to reach them. Find the light, he yelled, as if shouting to his daughter. urging her to remember the glimmer of joy they had shared back in the playground, at the edge of sun-kissed swings. "Fight, Mia." Summoning every ounce of strength, he clawed at the earth, pushing against the shadows that sought to envelop him. The laughter grew louder, but in the depths of that darkness, the memory of Mia's bright face lit a fire within him. "No more," he shouted, resolute and fierce as he lunged toward the shards. They twinkled, teasing him, as if encouraging his fight against the encroaching shadows. With one final surge of strength, he grasped onto a large shard, its edge cutting into his palm, but the pain was nothing, just a fleeting reminder of the urgency coursing through him. In that moment, the darkness recoiled just slightly, as if sensing the power of the light he now held. "You cannot save her," the voice bellowed, enveloping him in chilling tendrils. "She belongs to us." Mark stood firm, raising the shard high. "Not today." His voice rang clear, echoing through the forest with a disruptive energy. The shadows twisted, howling and thrashing desperately, threatening to drown out his newfound resolve. "Mia," he screamed, holding the shard with both hands, channeling every bit of love and energy he had into that fractured sliver. A bright light erupted, flooding the clearing with brilliance. The shadows recoiled further, shrieking in outrage as the shards exploded in an iridescent cascade, reflecting light in every direction. In that moment of blinding illumination, he saw Mia's sweet face again, a beautiful beacon of hope fighting through the fog of despair. "Daddy, help!" Her voice rang, clearer now, a melody piercing through the dark clouds suffocating them. With a surge of power, Mark turned and threw the shard into the center of the dark figure lunging at him. It pierced through like a spear of light, illuminating the creature, revealing its facade. It was monstrous, twisted by anguish, a horrifying reflection of the darkness it thrived in. As the shard struck, a shockwave rippled through the trees, banishing the shadows momentarily into retreat. He could feel the forest trembling, as if awakening from a long nightmare. The creature howled, disintegrating into tendrils of smoke and sorrow, dissolving as the light thrummed with life. "Mia," he shouted again, forging through the remnants of the shadows, now fleeing under the force of the light. He felt the choking grip around him dissipate, the fear lifting as clarity washed over him, certainty that he could reclaim her. He ran and ran, heart racing, until he spun around a massive tree trunk, finding the clearing with the remnants piled in moonlight. "Mia," and there she was, standing upon the soft earth, lit with the glow of what remained. She looked up at him, eyes wide with fear but also relief, color returning to her cheeks as the shadows shrank away. "Daddy," she called, her voice breaking the tension, wrapping around his heart like a warm embrace. Mark dashed forward and pulled her into his arms, clinging tight. "I'm here. I want to let you go again." It felt like a prayer, whispered into the night. Together, they stepped beyond the borders of that cursed realm, the forest losing its grip as the fading echoes of terror dissipated into the ether. As they rushed toward the car, leaving the dark woods behind, Mark glanced back. The shadows were retreating, screaming their futile promises of despair, and in that moment, he felt a mix of triumph and loss. They had escaped, but the remnants of darkness lingered. Once they reached the car, Mark fumbled for the keys, hands trembling with adrenaline and fear. He turned to Mia, who looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "Was it real?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "More real than I ever wanted," he replied softly, kissing her forehead. "But we made it. We faced it together, and I will always protect you." As he started the engine, the low rumble of the car seemed to thwart the last vestiges of darkness. He drove away, sun rising behind them, and the cabin receding into the distance, a scar on their memory, but fading with the light. They were safe now, together, and now a new chapter awaited them. A chapter where they chose life over darkness, where every laugh would drown out the whispers that once sought to consume. And just like that, the horror of a summer vacation turned into a tale of survival, a testimony to a father's love and a daughter's spirit. Now it's time for you to act. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that LL leave you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to keep the algorithm happy and feed your cravings for eerie tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.